Jed Katz, Javelin. Jed, where you at? All right, Dana Settle, Greycroft. Dana. Peter Lee, Baroda. Peter. And Ryan Swagar, Venture 51. All right, so strict time rules again. We're going to stick to time this time. First pitch is pretty obvious. And you, Adam, where you at? Come on up. Got the mic? Hope it all falls together.
Hello, everybody, again. Hopefully this goes a little bit smoother. But you guys have heard a lot about us already. So, can you go back a slide, please? Oh, I can do it. You're right. Beautiful. Thank you. So anyways, my name is Adam Greenberg, CEO and co-founder of UNU, and we set out to grow the best plants in the world using innovative lighting as well as automated controls. So first, I want to just address the tech. First of all, we have a hand-picked spectrum. As you can see on the back here, we spend a lot of time pulling out the UVA and UVB, which really adds the nutrients, the taste, gives you the higher vitamin content. Then we added the blue. The blue spectrum is what you need to grow lettuce, anything with leafy greens. And then we added red. Red is what you need to grow fruits. For vegetables, you need that for tomatoes. You need that for any type of fruit, as well as for cannabis. And finally, we added far red. Far red is what you need for higher internode spacing, which the sun doesn't do that well. So we actually have 3 to 4 times more yield than the sun does based on our far red spectrum. Together, this creates the most beneficial spectrum in the world. And what's great about this is it's also fully programmable. So after this, you can come find me and I will show you how we can take this from a blue spectrum to a red spectrum and how we can do it all automatically through just radio controls. Next, I want to talk about the specs. Real quick, we only take 500 watts compared to all of our competitors who take 1,000 watts. We only give off 1,000 BTUs of heat compared to our competitors who give off 4,000 BTUs of heat. What does this allow us to do? It allows less ducting, less HVAC, which means less electricity. Then it also allows for less water evaporation. It allows for less nutrient intake. So together, with all this together, you have farmers saving 60% of their OPEX, which is their most important factor, is their operational expense. Next, I wanted to address the questions about traction and customers. We have 6 months waiting in line. This is important because, well, we're lucky because traction's not an issue. Our sales pipeline, right now we have about $58 million in our sales pipeline. And I mean, we're lucky enough to say that we get to be in the business of taking incoming calls. And so this has been highly beneficial for where we're at as a company today. And finally, your next question is going to be, how do we fill $58 million worth of product? Well, manufacturing. We have one of the largest Asian contract manufacturers in the world who's now an investor, which I'm excited to say today. As well as to help us scale, they're helping us find 3 to 4 or 5 sources from around the world to make sure that we create the best product for the lowest cost. So in the end, got to wrap up here. I just want you to remember the name UNU, because in a year from now, we're really excited to be everywhere, and we hope that it's something that you'll all understand how to pronounce. When you see IUNU, it's pronounced UNU. Thank you.
All right, third time's the charm. Jed, I know you had a lot to say about the company, so we'll start with you.
So from what I understand, you're selling to indoor farms.
Correct.
Right? And so what is that sales process like? Let me ask it a different way. How difficult is it for the people that run those farms to make the decision to take down whatever lighting they're using and put yours in? It seems like a pretty big decision.
So our market last year was over $1 billion, and 20% of that was brand new. We're not even talking about retrofitting. So that's where the easy sell comes in. Now, when you're talking about retrofitting, it's quite simple because what we do is we also offer financing, up to $10 million worth of financing. We actually use Apple's financing company. They've worked really well with us. As well as because of our OPEX savings, for them switching over to this light, they pay for itself within 9 to 12 months. So from a business perspective for them, it's a no-brainer.
Just a quick follow-up, though. do they have to go through a long process of removing whatever is in there and then putting yours in? Is that like does that take a month to do?
Great question. So that has to be done at the end of the cycle of a plant. You don't want to disrupt it. But ultimately, they take it all down. There's usually 3 or 4 pieces. This is the one that's all-in-one plug and play. Takes 120, 240. That was important to us. So it's the all-in-one plug and play, and they just plug it in. It works right away, and they can scale up quite quickly. As well as you also asked about the sales cycle for this. It's quite short because we have data to prove it.
Okay.
Cool. So are you going after like new grow facilities?
Yeah, so
What's that look like? I mean, to answer kind of where you were headed, I mean, I think there's a huge market probably in the next 24 months for the states that are actually approving medicinal marijuana, correct?
Correct, and that's actually our market's 1.4 billion right now,
Right.
just for indoor horticultural lighting. So it's a lot bigger than most people think. What?
In the U.S.?
In the world right now. And then for these coming online right now, that's not even factored in there. So for these new ones coming on, it's been quite easy for us to sell. We are very focused on the West Coast, but there's also a big commercial play because we have supplemental greenhouse lighting here. California is actually going to be our biggest market because there's a lot of agricultural experts as well as the large commercials. To say a few, we've all heard of Driscoll's. Today, berries can't be grown indoors because the heat output of lights are too high. Well, we're 25% of the heat of everything else that exists today, which now maybe means that berries are possible indoors. So things like that make it very easy to get into the commercial scale. The question is, who are we going to go after, and which one are we going to pick to feed next?
Is this a razor blade model with bulbs being the long-term revenue growth, or is it really that you have to replace every couple of years these units?
2 things. I'm glad you asked that. Thank you. This is a software and a hardware play. What's important is that with this, it's the first single point source fully tunable light between spectrums, which means that we have lighting recipes. So imagine Emerald Live having high lycopene tomatoes, which people are willing to pay more for at Costco today. And he has a special recipe that makes them extra juicy. You can then he will push that recipe up there, and he will sell you his recipe, to which you can then download it. And and the lighting recipe will then grow your tomato the way Emerald likes his tomato to be grown. So that's one way of looking at it. Again, what was the other question?
The bulb versus the
Bulb is $75 a piece. There's 2 of them in there. Hold on one second. Those 2 tiny little bulbs, I wish I could turn it on. Come find me after if you want to see it. The 2 bulbs in there put off 50,000 lumens. So it's blinding.
Would that mean if you turned it on, we'd catch fire?
Yeah.
It is UL listed. It's safe. It's not black magic.
How often do they have to be replaced, the bulbs?
Once a year, we're working on a 2-year bulb right now. So it is sort of a razor blade model from the bulb side, but as well as the software side, because the lighting recipes are very important.
What's your margin on the bulbs?
I can't disclose that because this is a public. I was told not to disclose anything I didn't want the whole world to see.
And are you already installed in a number of places? You said you have data, so
Correct.
how long have you been installed? Like, is it long enough to?
We've been testing for a year. We've been selling for 6 months. As you can see, Microsoft is behind us here. They've reordered twice. So we're working with them to create something that will be fully sustainable. And we're growing lettuce.
Microsoft has a farm?
It's actually a big pull for their employees. Their employees are very passionate about sort of the ecosystem and being green. And so they can grow this for 50 cents a pound, which most people today, when you buy organic lettuce, you're paying closer to $1 to $4 a pound. So we actually make it economically viable as well as hyper-local.
And is there a home market for this as well? I mean, you've just talked about the commercial market, but
Are you going to finance frat houses? Let's get down to brass tacks here. There's a lot of money. Frat houses.
So our target market does not include frat houses, unfortunately. I'm sorry. But we do take credit cards, and I will ship one to your frat house wherever you are. I can take it here if you'd like.
Apparently, yeah.
We understand that commercially, that's very important to go there first, because we're talking about huge orders. We're talking orders that are anywhere individually between $8 and $36 million that are materializing very slowly. And so because of that, we understand that the commercial setting is going to be very easy to fill all of our capacity and bring up capacity to get the price down, which then means the consumer model is very rational. And then we can start talking about 2 refrigerators in every home, one to store food and one to grow food. where you can then start having a second stainless steel refrigerator, where you open up a different door and you could have tomatoes growing in there and you could have lettuce growing there. I mean, we're talking about, with this right here, is this industry standards 4 foot by 4 foot. And this right here puts off 24 7.5-pound organic heads of lettuce every 3 weeks. And that's just from the Spectrum. And you don't need soil. These all behind me right here are all just with seaweed extract, organic, with water. And that's all it takes to grow it. Because light really is what matters to plants. And that's something that most people don't know, is that light is the main driving factor.
Do you have anybody on your team who has sold into the people you're selling to?
Yes.
Who?
We have a horticultural consultant who's spent a lot of time consulting for different businesses in Washington, in Canada, in Colorado, as well as in California. And the whole point of this is to get into the gurus of the industry, because the hydroponic industry is not very well known to any of us. And so what we're able to do is we can get the people who can talk about it and they try it, and we still have yet to give one away, and people are willing to pay full price. They try it, and everyone starts saying, oh, look at these lights, these are amazing, and it just sort of spreads. We're finding ourselves on blogs, on different social media that we never even thought. Come find me. Thanks, guys.
Well done.
You knew, Adam. Great. I think you sold one, Ryan.
I'm in.
This is for sale.
All right, next up, Upside, Tom.
It's the door prize.
3 minutes.
Thanks. So rather than going through all the slides again, I'm just going to do a quick recap and then touch on some other points as well. So Upside is Wealthfront for independent investment advisors. We provide a fully automated, fully white labeled digital advisor platform for registered investment advisors to help them manage emerging affluent accounts cost effectively and at scale, and to help them meet the expectations of the next generation of investor. We're way more capital efficient than a direct-to-consumer model with break-even on acquisition costs within weeks rather than years. We're a registered investment advisor ourselves and serve as a sub-advisor on the accounts that we're managing for the advisors we work with, which makes us much more than just a technology solution. And we're operating in a very big market with 30,000 plus RIAs managing over $4 trillion in assets. And the addressable part of that book is, for Upside's technology, is greater than half. So now I want to address a couple other points that came up. First, talk a little bit more about the use cases. We heard very consistently and continue to hear very consistently that advisors are interested in our technology to help them manage emerging affluent clients that they already have, to help them avoid turning away emerging affluent clients that are coming to them through referrals, and to compete against robo-advisors, so the Wealthfronts and the Betterments of the world. The third, competing against the robo-advisors, is a big concern for all of them, particularly around the intergenerational transfer of wealth. So it's forecast between $10 and $15 trillion worth of wealth will transfer from the pre-boomer and boomer generations to our generation in the next 10 years. But that's a pretty vague use case. So the specific use cases are existing clients and new clients. For existing clients, among the advisors who we have signed up, 2 are intending to use the platform to migrate between $5 and $10 million worth of clients. These are $1 to $200 million firms. And again, it's about getting those clients into a solution that provides meaningful and valuable wealth management for them, but doesn't cost the advisor a lot of time and headache to manage and operate those accounts. And we have a third that's intending to move between $30 and $40 million. And then there are new clients. There are two kind of use cases we're seeing with new clients is, one, just not wanting to turn away referrals. So another advisor we have signed up turned away between $5 and $6 million worth of assets over the last 6 months. These are accounts that don't meet his minimum, and he just wants not to turn them away anymore. And the second is, we tend to see influencers. A lot of the advisors we work with are influencers in this space. They have radio shows. Ritholtz Wealth Management, the 2 principals, have 140,000 Twitter followers between the 2 of them. And they get a huge volume of clients coming into them who, again, they have to turn away. And so they're using our technology to help bring those clients on and turn them into a source of value for them, again, without having to spend time and energy actually managing those accounts.
All right. Great.
So I'll hand it over to questions.
Yeah, let's start with Dana this time. You guys can take it from there.
I have to apologize because I didn't see the presentation, so it's a little bit hard to dig in. But I am just curious. I mean, sort of what you would say is wrong with the kind of what do you call them?
Robo-advisors?
Robo-advisors.
So-
because I mean, it's just such a trend, and things do
Yeah.
seem to be moving so much that direction, and to be sort of on the side of essentially enabling the people that are being sort of disintermediating is just a
So
fundamental
I think there are kind of two parts of the response there. First is it is much easier to build a business model like that in a market environment where the S&P 500 is going up 20% per year. The robo-advisors are fantastic. We have a very similar technology, so we certainly believe in it, but they haven't really been tested yet. And the real question is, when the market corrects and goes down 10%, how many of the people will make bad decisions, take their money out, and attrite on those businesses? And really, that's where we see the value of advisors. Where advisors really earn their money is less around the management of the investment accounts, much more around helping clients through behavioral challenges. So you want to withdraw $20,000 from your account. Having an advisor there who's able to engage with you and say, hey, noticed you want to withdraw $20,000. Why is that? Want to buy a new car? No problem. Panicking because the markets are going down? Let's have a conversation. And so we think it's about taking the best of the advisory model and the best of the robo-advisor model and bringing the two of them together.
So I have to apologize. I'm in the same boat as Dana. So
Sure.
You're seeing this huge shift from the traditional UBS offices to private family offices, and one of the huge pieces of kind of that move is the alternative assets that can actually acquire. So is that a big focus of the actual platform?
Less so. So that shift is a big part of what makes us, builds the market for us. So obviously the guys at JP Morgan have solutions through JP Morgan. They don't really have anything like what we're doing, but we work with the independent firms. So access to things like alternative assets is more appropriate for and more suited to high net worth individuals. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the part of the book, which is about 50% of the assets generally that these firms manage, that's below $1 million, right, aren't considered high net worth, and their investment management needs are a little bit more straightforward and hence more suitable also for an automated technology solution.
So you used that example of one of the new clients that's managing between 5 and 6, and they had a bunch of accounts that a lot of advisors just don't want to deal with. Do you see that being like a huge potential piece of the business?
Yeah, that's very much where we're focused. And I should say my background, I came to Upside from Barclays Bank in London, where I was in charge of strategy for relaunching the retail investing business. And very specifically what we were trying to do is use technology to serve lower value clients cost effectively. And it's really that experience that brought me to Upside and led me to reach out to Junie and start what we're doing now.
From the perspective of end consumer,
Yep.
is your fees that you charge be the same as what they would have if they just had a traditional advisor who did not use your platform?
Yeah, essentially, usually a little less. So the advisor still owns the advisor, the client relationship, and sets the account fee. We charge between 10 and 25 basis points. That's usually a part of the overall account fee. We see different models where some advisors really want to be pretty hands-off and scale it up to volume, but not really engage with clients all that much. And we see fees between 30 and 50 basis points there, again, of which we're taking 10 to 25. And then there are firms that are more interested still in creating a relationship and engaging with the client on some of the behavioral issues, having annual checkups, things like that. And we see fees more around 80 to 100 basis points in that space.
Do you see anyone not charging the consumer the fee and just assuming that's going to keep the consumer retained longer?
It's not really, so the money is kind of fungible. The question ultimately is, what is the advisor going to charge the client? And whether he says, I'm going to charge 70 basis points and I'll eat the 25 basis points. Essentially what he's saying is, I think 105 basis points is what this is worth and not passing it through. So it's certainly a possibility, but generally investment advisors we haven't seen anyone doing that.
One other question. Who is the decision maker? Are you selling to Barclays or are you selling to each individual advisor?
We're selling to each individual advisor. So we're starting with mid-size advisors, $100 to $500 million in assets. As we continue to grow a track record and build more features into the technology, we'll move up to larger billion-dollar-plus firms. And then ultimately, there's definitely application, and again, coming from my background at Barclays, there's definitely application at the larger wirehouses to scale this up across very large businesses.
And do you end up having a conflict at all with the advisors that you're essentially enabling? I mean, as you go direct to consumer?
Oh, we're not going
You're not
direct to
going
consumer.
at all.
And actually, that was a principled statement we made from the beginning. And I wanted to actually mention this from a timing perspective. We started about 12 months ago building the technology platform intending to go direct to consumer. We learned pretty early on in that process that we were a little bit too late in the direct-to-consumer space, very crowded. And so we pivoted at the beginning of this calendar year to an enterprise model where we're working with investment advisors. Now, if we had tried doing that from the beginning, I think we would have been too early for that. But the advisory space is absolutely preoccupied with the robo-advisors right now, and very concerned about being able to develop propositions and lines of business that meet that challenge and, again, meet the expectations of the next generation of investor.
Do you have data on, for one advisor, how much more business they can handle using your platform versus just doing it offline themselves? And does that make up for the fees that they're basically passing on to you?
There's no one real formula. So again, there are different advisors anticipate using the platform in different ways. And so Ritholtz Wealth Management, who we announced going live with earlier this week, wants to have 300 clients in the next 12 months. You know, they're essentially trying to scale up without having really any additional FTE measured against that. There are others that are intending to hire 2, 3, 4 guys to really create relationships and build a pipeline so that they can cultivate them and bring them up into their high net worth proposition. And so it's not, there's real variability depending on how the advisor wants to use the platform. The platform is designed to be flexible to allow the advisor to determine that engagement model.
I mean, in terms of kind of, I guess, features, just, can I ask, but relative to, the robo-advisors technologies?
Yep.
Are you guys on par? Are you, I mean...
I'd say we're on par with where they were 12 months ago. So we clearly have some feature development to do. We have a robust pipeline, and we're working on it.
Great. Thanks, Tom.
All right.
Okay, next up, Plug DJ. Alex, come on up.
Hi, my name is Alex Reinlieb. I'm a CEO and founder of Plug DJ, where we turn content into engaged communities. We all know that the world is becoming increasingly social, but the way we actually consume media online is a solitary and lonely experience. And there's a lot of things that are broken economically and from a product basis with the products that are out there. People want to engage around content, and they simply can't do it in a positive and effective way. And many products simply cannot make it out globally because of complexities of the media and licensing and distribution systems. We've solved all these problems by creating a fun and engaging way for people to consume media in a truly social fashion. We stream from the largest media libraries on the planet, and which incurs 0 licensing fees to us, and it's enabled us to distribute globally from day one. Proof is in the pudding. Our audience has organically grown to over 3.7 million registered users in over 190 countries. What's even more impressive is our engagement. Our average user spends over 2.5 hours actively engaged every time they use the product. By active engagement, we're talking about chatting, interacting with other people, upvoting songs, downvoting songs, adding things to your playlist, anything that keeps people engaged. This is a lean forward experience and fills a niche that is simply not being filled out there. This is an example of one of our thousands of user-created communities. This is an example of a fully branded community by one of the fastest growing EDM labels on the planet, Monster Cat. This is one great example of how we can create this into a fully functional, deeply immersive advertising channel for brands, key influencers, YouTube channels, anybody that's looking to get a worldwide audience that's super engaged. Once you're in the experience, it's fully driven by the community, by community curation, which is very important. But most importantly, we're finding that people are attached to the experience because they form bonds around common interests. Our audience is very interesting when it comes to this market. They're not your average music listener. They're, of course, into music. I don't want to steer you the wrong way there, but there's a very strong overlap with the social gaming world. And this is extremely important because these fans spend enormous amounts of time engaged with other people around the world. They're very active in online social communities, and they're already very well bought into our model that enables people to earn points, level up, earn badges, and other rewards over time as they spend on the site. It's going to be a key component for our initial monetization strategy. Our engagement deepens over time. As people spend more frequent weeks on the site, they're spending more time in each of those subsequent weeks. When you have an audience that is spending so much time engaged, lean forward, there's enormous opportunity to monetize. At our current rate, if we don't grow, if we're able to collect 15 cents per active user, we'll be at break even. But that's not as interesting to me as the massive opportunity that's there for us to monetize in the way that a social game would. All we have to do is keep people engaged, keep people focused on the experience, and they're already very well bought into our model. And I glossed over this last time, but this is an example. This is our team that has made this possible. Super authentic to the cause, and of course we've had the financial support of Javelin Ventures for the past year or so. Thank you very much.
It's a lot easier the second time around.
That's why I won't be asking him any questions, by the way.
Peter, light him up.
Sure. Congrats on the engagement metrics. They look good.
Thank you.
In terms of monetization, obviously that is, you can determine how soon you really ratchet that up. What are your thoughts right now on different models that you want to choose, advertising versus virtual goods versus other things?
Great question. It makes the most sense for us to start with virtual goods because we already have a extremely active user base that's been champing at the bit for us to allow them to pay for virtual goods. The way we think about it is broken into two main categories when it comes to virtual goods. One are the aesthetic-based virtual goods like avatars and backgrounds, things that are outwardly facing and people like the status of it. And the other is things that actually enhance and improve the experience for people. Our audience is the type of audience that wants a free-to-play but pay for customizations and enhancements along the experience. In terms of timeline, we're working on the mechanics right now from a development perspective that enable us to charge people. We're expecting to have this in the next quarter or so. One of the really interesting things about this is that we just recently revamped our rewards system in place where people earn points and level up and earn badges for spending time on the site. They are already being trained to pay virtually for items that they're earning over time. The next step is to introduce money into the equation. From a longer-term perspective, because we have such deep engagement, we're attractive to really any brand, whether it's an artist, a label, a YouTube channel, or a brand like Coke that wants to reach an engaged audience. This audience is so lean forward and so focused, they're paying attention, and there's also an opportunity to get a lot of peer-to-peer advertising amongst the crowd. It's also a great way to run a focus group on what people are interested in because you get live feedback. One of the big advantages that we have as a community-driven product is that we have no shortage of feedback, and we've taken that to heart from day one, and we'll continue to do that as a way to monetize in a couple different ways.
So you are going to be entering, do you have a CPM model with this? You are going to work with agencies and brands?
We, not in the next couple of months, but I think longer term, there's certainly an opportunity to do that. Our gut right now is telling us that we don't want to necessarily degrade the experience by throwing up banner ads or something that's going to detract people and just be unthoughtful. But when you make it deeply immersive, that resonates very well with people. This is a great example of this. So this record label is based out of Canada. They're one of the fastest growing electronic labels in the world. And this scene is a boat party overlooking the Toronto skyline. The Black Cat avatars, which unfortunately are not animated in a static image like this, are the musicians and artists that work at the label. They use this as an engagement platform, and it's an enormously immersive way for them to advertise their brand and their channel. What's amazing about this environment in particular is that in the beginning, it was very hands-on by the artists that worked at the label, but it's organically now moderated by the community. So it runs itself, and it's an advertisement and a distribution channel for them to get out to around the world. The other thing we could do, which we've experimented with in the early stages, was putting product placement, much like they would do in movies, in the experience. So there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't make the DJ booth Pioneer or the speaker set Bose or Sonos, and you can let your imagination run from there.
Cool. I've got a portfolio company that does that, can help. So.
Oh, great.
Let me
Yeah.
know.
Let's talk afterwards, please.
I've been involved with a company that was in this space about 6 years ago called Doppelganger, which literally, I mean, it's like deja vu. And we had a deal with Interscope Records and had, very, very similar sort of concept, and not unlike Second Life, I mean, very highly engaged community, but ultimately, kind of it reaches a certain point and kind of stops growing, and very engaged community. But how do you, what's different now than 5 or 6 or 10 years ago? That will, I think, keep people engaged over the long term. And then B, what, I don't think you can take sort of the commercial side of it lightly, because it always does feel like, we can have, product placement and brands, but at the end of the day, I mean, people who are super engaged in these communities also don't want to feel too advertised to. And so I do think there's a balance there, and just curious as to how you're thinking about it.
Sure, great question. On A, I'd like to point back to what Bill Gross said this morning, which is timing. Timing is a lot when it comes to building a company. 5, 6 years ago, YouTube was amazing, but there wasn't the same buy-in from record companies, from content owners about YouTube. YouTube has gotten so big now, and they're able to muscle their way around that content owners know they need YouTube to distribute. We're an amplification tool for YouTube. When one person selects a video to play and there's 1,000 people in a room, that's 1,000 views just like that. So we're very much aligned with content owners, and I think a true compliment in why we'll be able to sustain on that front when it comes to content owners. In terms of user engagement, I often get asked, well, you sound kind of like a game for music. Why would people keep using you over time? The fundamental difference between us and games is that people don't stop listening to music. People don't stop watching videos. We're a fun and engaging way to do something that they're already going to do. So those are two of the main differences, I would say, but also at the heart of it, we don't consider, something I mentioned in the first presentation, we don't consider ourselves a music video company. It's core to what we're doing, but we consider ourselves to be a community management tool and a community-driven product. And that enters into every way we think about the product, the way we build it, the way we treat our audience, the way we give them the tools to manage their communities so we can step away and so it can scale effectively. And then the second question was around working with brands, correct? Yes. So in our a couple of proof of concepts, we found that when you do it in a thoughtful and engaging way, immersive, it's very effective, and people actually like being part of the experience. But I agree, it's a slippery slope. You can't just tack on something that's going to degrade the experience and whatnot. Great example, though, is when Red Bull did the stratosphere jump or do any of the number of really exciting things that they do, there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't have a GoPro or a Red Bull sponsored room or sponsored environment where we make the experience fun for people to consume together.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. All right. Plug DJ. Remember, you can follow all these companies on vator.co/plugdj. Okay, last but not least is Personal RN, Kurosh. There you are.
I'm Kurosh Parsipur. I'm the CEO of Personal RN. I'm a practicing ER doc and ICU doc, and that's my co-founder, Steve Kramer, Dr. Steve Kramer. Between the two of us, we've had, I think, 35 years of bedside experience. So we really believe that it's important to help patients become fluent in the language of their disease. We're starting with stroke just because it's so complex. It's very scary. It adds on a whole new host of responsibilities. But like any other chronic illness, when it comes in, patients have a difficult time understanding what's happening, especially in the inpatient setting where they come in and they get this, the patient handout. talks about everything: ischemic stroke, hemorrhagic stroke, subarachnoid hemorrhages, blah, blah, blah. They have to learn everything in 5 to 6 days. And we, or these handouts, or the internet, basically speak in a language that is completely foreign to them. So it's a $17.4 billion problem. Readmissions happen because patients don't understand what's happening in the inpatient while they're inpatients. They go home with questions and they bounce back. And with stroke, 1 out of 4 patients bounce back. But we can prevent those. With 90% of these can be preventable with good inpatient education. So we decided to build our first product as a stroke app, which is a mobile health solution that starts at admission, goes throughout discharge and the continuum of care. So as you can see, it provides simple, personalized content that talks about the specific type of stroke. When we were working on our user experience, it was important to us. We made 3 key distinctions. Number 1, our patients have never seen a tablet. Number 2, they can't read anything higher than a 4th grade education level. And number 3, that they can't see, or they're colorblind. So we really employed that into our user experience. We've gotten a lot of support from our healthcare providers, and again, the user experience for that was also completely separate. We wanted to make sure that it wasn't obtrusive to a busy ER doc that needs to activate the AI that delivers this content. And basically, we've so far been able to raise 85% of our healthcare, of our investment fund from healthcare providers and executives. So the business model is that it's a subscription model to hospitals, and they pay about $85 per patient per month for a 2-year period, and that comes out to about $2,000. But that saves them $10,000 for every patient that's readmitted. And once we do proof of concept, for these 800,000 annual new strokes, we believe that it can subsequently become available to the 8 million currently stroke survivors and 2.2 million caregivers. So the market can rapidly expand after proof of concept. So one of the key elements is we know that digital health works, but we can't get it in the hands of the patients that it needs to work in. So we are ahead of our competitors because
We'll never know.
ask me the question.
Thank you, Doctor. Ryan, you want to bring us home?
Yeah, so obviously there's a huge transition right now, and a lot of people competing basically for patients, right, and putting together these big groups. Is that going to be your target focus, is aligning yourself kind of with the country club of doctors and these new patient services?
Well, I mean, what we're doing, are you talking specifically going to the hospitals as our customer base?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. For right now, yeah, and that's the primary business model. And the reason for it is because we have the advantage of going immediately into point of care solutions. So Steve's lab has basically been able to show that when a tablet is provided to a patient in an inpatient setting, in an acute setting, and it's provided by the healthcare provider, it's looked at as a tool, not as a toy. And adoption is really, really high. We've had 98% compliance and 60% retention in lab settings. So we think we can translate that over, and once we can do these proof of concepts with stroke, we're starting with stroke with 90%. So if we can prove it with stroke, it can scale to other solutions. And as you can see, we have cardiac, we have pneumonia app, we have concussio app, we have asthma app. All of these are easy to, because the platform, the architecture is modular and the way we built it, we can quickly scale it out to any of these and provide specific kinds of services as depending on what readmission problems the hospitals have.
You make a claim that it's going to decrease readmissions by 90%. Where are you getting that, and has that proven out with your product so far?
It is not, and we are going to be starting beta testing this month.
So where are you getting the 90%?
Out of the stroke journals. So stroke, if you notice, stroke is the one disease that actually gets inpatient nursing hired to specifically coordinate the inpatient care, just because education is such a key element to them. So, and the 90% is 1 out of 4 of the admissions that happen in the first 30 days. So people bounce back for sure, and they have chronic illnesses, they're going to get more sick. But if somebody gets sick within 30 days after they just left the hospital, That's your fault, doctor. And that's what the Affordable Care Act is really trying to cut down.
Just curious, do you have proprietary or better content than these other sites, or is it just in the distribution kind of mechanism and the point of distribution?
Both. We've applied for 3 provisional patents so far, and the mechanism by which we're providing our education is very simple. It's basically for every care setting that our patients in, whether it's in the ICU, in the ER, or on the floor, it always provides information as to what's happened, what's happening, and what's going to happen. And I always teach my medical students or residents, I say, if we can answer those questions to our patients, we've done 90% of our job, right? So when you go in, what happened? How did I end up here? Or why are you putting a needle in my arm? Or am I ever going to walk again? But we can answer those very simply for all care settings and take it and apply that model across the board, not only to diseases, to stroke, but to other diseases as well.
And then, is the cost that the hospital incurs covered by insurance?
No, we're actually not even bothering with that right now. And it's an entirely cost savings play, though there is a bill that's being passed, and that's going to be 2 to 3 years right now, that's going to help reimbursement for management of chronically ill patients. So coordination of care.
How personalized is the app? So does the doctor put in very specific?
Absolutely. So it basically asks the patient's name. It talks to, if it's like the spouse, it'll say, your husband, Steve, has suffered a stroke. It recognizes where the patient is in the care setting. If you're in the ICU and you want to jump ahead in the module, it knows based on the algorithms that we've coded in there that an average ICU time for this kind of stroke happening in this region of the brain is really gonna they'll probably be in the ICU for like 3 days. So if they try to jump ahead of that before that, it'll prompt them. Are you sure you're out of the ICU? So things like that. And then also, this talks about every kind of stroke that exists. But if you've had, for example, a left temporal injury, you're going to have language deficits. You're not going to have problems walking. But this will tell you you're not going to walk, you're not going to sleep, you're not going to do a whole host of things. This is scary. So,
is there a direct-to-consumer play you've thought about?
absolutely, and that was the prior slide that I had shown you guys. Once we do proof of concept, then what we want to do is we want to be able to take this and make it applicable to the patients that aren't in the inpatient setting, and so they can go to 8 million stroke survivors and their caregivers as well. Again, this is just stroke. So when we scale, this is going to become applicable to all chronic illnesses.
Does it need FDA clearance in the hospitals?
Not at all. We're FDA exempt because we're purely an educational platform. We do have to be HIPAA compliant, but we have a relationship with Box as well as Verizon, and these are some of the key relationships that we've developed to help with our development and our distribution.
So just so I'm clear, do you have hospitals right now that are testing this?
We're going to start in 2 weeks, yeah, so Ventura
Okay,
and UCI.
And then have they said to you that if the test is successful, we will roll this out?
We haven't even asked that so far because we haven't even done a price point validation.
Okay.
Really?
Do you have concerns around it's better for the patient, they know more, it's better for reoccurrence. Hospitals make money by treating patients, so do they view it as the finance guy doesn't like it, whereas the doctors like it? Just curious.
No, absolutely. So you're right. It was in the best interest of the hospital for patients to bounce back until the Affordable Care Act came in and said, no, this is ridiculous. So now they're being levied very heavy fines. So, for example, and stroke CMS just said stroke is the 6th diagnosis. So it's CHF, MI, pneumonia, total joint arthroplasty, COPD, and now stroke. So if they exceed readmission rates, if a hospital exceeds that, all of their patients that have that any illness that's being reimbursed with by Medicare or Medicaid is going to get penalized by 3%. So that's a big chunk of money, and they're really scared to find solutions to how to fix this.
All right. That's it. Good job, sir. Yeah, thank you.